Hello, my name is Savannah Litke, and this is my first Drawing Connections for the Military Social Work class. Should say my name, there we go. So first I want to discuss the military cultural competence. So it is very important for the social worker to be competent in the military culture. Social workers must have a general understanding of the larger military, its basic history, and the complementary roles played by the different branches. The different branches would be the 5 military branches: the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. There are 22.7 million veterans in the general population and slightly more than 2.3 million uniformed service personnel in the United States Armed Forces. So this is a lot of people that social workers must work with. And if they're not competent to the military culture, it's going to be hard to really build rapport. So being competent in the military culture can help social workers to build rapport with the military client and convey respect. If you're working with someone and you don't understand, you don't have a basic understanding of what they're doing or what they're struggling with, then it's going to be really hard to work with them and they're not going to trust you. Let me move this a little bit. Next, I want to talk about deployment. So this week really discussed deployment, and deployment is the relocation of forces and military to desired operational areas. Deployment can result in strain on the military, their family, and the community. So it's important for the social worker to address the issues surrounding deployment, to have a basic knowledge of deployment, and then interventions for deployment to better help the client, whether that be the family member or the service member. Some protective factors that will lessen the risk for challenges during employment are things such as flexible gender roles. So when the service member leaves the family and goes on deployment, it's important, someone might have to step up and take over their roles. Other protective factors would be active coping strategies and community and social support. So really having support there, whether that be family, the community, maybe attending support groups. Risk factors that social workers can target in regards to deployment would be people that maybe are more isolated, so not as doesn't have as much support as another family might have. They're an isolated family, a young, maybe a new, inexperienced family, and a family with multiple stressors, so other challenges or traumas that they might be facing aside from the normal stressors of deployment. So that can increase the risk. The chapters really discuss resiliency and the importance of resiliency in the military culture. And resiliency is the important to withstand and rebound from disruptive life challenges such as deployment. It's really important for the social worker to focus on resiliency, and focusing on resiliency really helps social workers and the military client to address and target particular interventions. So things that are really going to help them during this time. Resiliency really helps that. The articles and the book discuss the 3 phases of deployment. So it actually discussed different cycles. So there were it discussed 3 cycles, or there might be 5 cycles or 7 cycles, but I'm going to focus on the 3 cycles, the 3 phases of deployment. They each have their own unique stressors, and that would be pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment. And it's important to note that all of these cycles vary for each individual, each family member, each service member. So it's important for the social worker to know that not everyone is going to experience the same difficulties during deployment. It is unique depending on the individual and their family. Next, we have deployment interventions. So interventions that the social worker can use to really help the client, help the family member, help the military member. So pre-deployment. So before the military member actually deploys, it is important for the social worker to encourage the military member and their family to discuss and plan as early as possible. So discuss the changes that are going to occur, talking about it, just open communication between the family members about how things are going to change, the roles that are going to be different, what new responsibilities are going to happen for each family member. The social worker can also implement the FOCUS, which is the Families Overcoming Under Stress. This is an 8-session educational resiliency training program. And then during deployment, interventions that can be used by the social worker are helping the family to focus on building resilience. So again, resiliency is very important in the military culture. It is seen as a strength. It's also important for the social worker to help foster healthy communication between family members, between the community, between the service member and the family at home. It's important for them to build upon support, whether this again be the family, the community, possibly a support group. And then the social worker should also provide direct counseling to both the family member and the family member that is deployed. Next, we have post-deployment, and post-deployment in this cycle focuses on the anticipation for deployment or for them returning from employment and post-deployment itself. So the social worker can help to negotiate new and old conflicts. The social worker can help the client to build upon new skills learned during the separation. So again, with pre-deployment, they were figuring out, what new roles and responsibilities each family member is going to have to take on. So building upon those skills that they learned while the family member was deployed. Also, it's important for the social worker to continue to foster continued, oh my goodness. It is important for the family member to foster continued communication amongst the family members and open communication and connect the family to necessary resources. I haven't talked much about children, but children, 80% of the children of active duty family members or active duty members are educated in civilian schools. So a social worker in this school setting can help to strengthen the child's connection to the school, provide support services to both the child and the family member. Next, this week, we also discussed and read about severe and chronic service-related injuries. So some of these injuries might include PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, traumatic amputation, spinal cord injuries, Southwest Asian infectious disease, and Agent Orange. It's important to note that depending when the client served or when the military member served, they might have been exposed to different illnesses or injuries than others. So it's important to know when the client served to better understand which injury the military member may have and what they might have been exposed to. It's also important to note that some military members and veterans may have never sought treatment for these injuries due to stigma or fear of no longer being able to serve. In older veterans, it's common to have hearing impairment and visual impairment, but again, it doesn't just mean older veterans, it's for anyone, but older veterans are more common to experience these. Some interventions that social workers should be aware of with working with severe and chronic service-related injuries are just having knowledge of the injury in general will aid the social worker in referring the client to the necessary services. So medically, we can't help them, but we can refer them to someone that medically can help them. So that's a very important intervention with this population. It's also important to increase the social and family support during the time of recovery and rehabilitation. So if you haven't realized by now, social support, family support is very important throughout deployment, illnesses, basically any aspect of the military culture. Next, we talk about the LGBT military members and veterans. So before 1993, LGBT individuals were not allowed to serve in the military. And then in 1993, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was implemented. This is that the LGBT population can, in fact, join the military. However, they are supposed to be secretive about their sexual orientation, and they cannot be involved in a same-sex marriage. And then in 2011, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was repealed. However, the LGBT individuals were recognized, but not the transgender. So transgender was left out of the policy itself, and then the repeal of the policy as well. Along with the normal everyday LGBT or the normal military struggles, LGBT clients struggle with isolation, coming out, mental and physical health issues, family romantic issues, and extra stress due to possible harassment or discrimination due to being part of the LGBT community. As social workers, we are required to ask the sexual orientation during an assessment. Research shows that the LGBT population is less likely to share that they are part of the population if they are not directly asked. It's also important for social workers to be aware of the effect of having to keep their sexual orientation and large parts of their life hidden. So this is huge. They've kept it secret for so long. How has that affected them mentally and emotionally and even physically? Next, we have social workers should be aware of whether the client has come out yet. So it's important to note if the client has not come out yet, they might lack support, or they might not have as big of a support system, or they might feel more isolated. So being aware of whether the client has come out yet is key in assessing support system and level of isolation. And there are my references.